The oldest surviving map of the entire known world is 12 centimeters wide and 8 centimeters tall. Smaller than your phone. A Babylonian scribe pressed it into a clay tablet around 700 BC. Oceans, continents, mythological kingdoms beyond the edge of reality minus all of it, in something you could lose between your couch cushions. Several maps on this list show things they had no business knowing. One charted coastlines with an accuracy that implies a mathematical projection not invented for another 3 centuries. One guided Christopher Columbus straight to a continent he fundamentally misunderstood. And one was purchased by Yale for $300,000, authenticated by the most credentialed historians alive, unveiled to international headlines the day before Columbus Day minus, and later found to be painted with a chemical compound first manufactured in a Norwegian factory in 1923. These are the ancient maps nobody has fully explained. 8 of them. Let's start at the bottom of the calendar and work our way up to the most expensive embarrassment in cartographic history. Number 1. The Babylonian iPhone. Picture a clay tablet, 12.2 centimeters by 8.2. Dug out of the ground at Sippar, about 60 kilometers north of Babylon, and acquired by the British Museum in 1882. The Akkadian cuneiform on it wasn't translated until 1889, and when scholars finally read it, they realized they were holding the oldest known attempt to draw the entire world. And the entire world, according to Babylon, was a circle, a flat disk with the Euphrates River running straight down the middle like a spine. Babylon itself sits marked just north of center minus. Because of course it does, it's the main character minus, and wrapped around the whole thing is a ring of water they called the Bitter River. The ocean. The edge. Now here is where the ancient mapmaker stops being a geographer and starts being a fantasy novelist. Beyond that Bitter River are 7 or 8 triangular regions called Nagu. Foreign lands. Places out there. And the captions describing them are not what you'd call tourist-friendly. One of them carries a warning that, translated, says, "A winged bird cannot safely complete its journey there." That's it. That's the review. 0 stars, the birds don't make it back. Another region is helpfully labeled as the location of Utnapishtim's Ark. Utnapishtim being the Babylonian Noah, the guy who survived the Great Flood. So this map includes, as a geographic feature, the parking spot of a mythological boat. Imagine Google Maps, but one of the pins is just where the flood guy keeps his canoe. That's the level of confidence we're working with. The known universe, rendered at trading card size, with a clearly marked "Here be no birds" zone. Number 2. The geologist who died 3,000 years too early. Around 1150 BC, in Egypt's eastern desert, a scribe named Amenakte, son of Ipui, from the workers' village of Deir el-Medina, sat down to make a map of a place called Wadi Hammamat. What he produced is now in the Museo Egizio in Turin, and it is officially the oldest surviving geological map on Earth. It's a monster, 2,820 millimeters long. Nearly 3 meters of papyrus depicting a 15-kilometer stretch of desert, complete with 28 handwritten captions labeling roads, gold mines, quarrying sites, a well, and a sanctuary. South is at the top, because ancient mapmakers had simply not agreed on which way up was, and nobody could make them. But here's the part that should not exist. Amenakti color-coded the rocks. He used pink to mark the sedimentary stone and black to mark the volcanic and metamorphic stone. He was distinguishing between types of rock by how they formed, which is the entire founding principle of geology. A science that would not be invented for roughly 3,000 more years. So a Bronze Age scribe was doing accurate field geology with a working color key, while the rest of the planet was still a couple of millennia away from the concept of a fossil. And then nobody built on it. The papyrus got bought by a collector named Bernardino Drovetti sometime between 1814 and 1821, sold to King Charles Felix of Sardinia, and filed away. Amenakte invented a discipline and immediately retired from it, because there was no discipline to invent yet. The loneliest correct man in the desert. Number 3. The world's most expensive jigsaw puzzle. In the early 3rd century C, between 203 and 211, The Roman Emperor Septimius Severus decided that Rome needed a map of Rome. Not a sketch, not a guide. The whole city. Every building, every house, every shop, every staircase, every monument carved into marble at a scale of 1 to 240 and mounted on a wall inside the Temple of Peace. The finished thing was 18 meters wide and 13 meters tall, spread across 150 slabs of Proconesian marble. They called it the Forma Urbis Romae. It was the kind of flex only an empire could afford, a city literally bragging about itself, in stone at a level of detail where you could find an individual staircase. And then time did what time does. Today, only 10 to 15% of it survives, and that surviving fraction is shattered into 1,186 fragments. Marble confetti. Scholars have been trying to fit the pieces back together for 500 years, which has earned it the title of the world's largest and oldest unsolved jigsaw puzzle. 5 centuries. No box, no picture on the lid, no edge pieces, because all the edges broke. In 1999, a Stanford computer scientist named Mark Lavoie launched a digital reconstruction project to brute force the thing with technology, and even that has only chipped away at it. The puzzle keeps getting new pieces. 2 minus as recently as 2014, a fragment that completed the words Circus Flaminius turned up at the Palazzo Maffei Mariscotti, a building owned by the Vatican. So somewhere, possibly in a wall, possibly under a flower bed, the rest of ancient Rome is still out there, waiting to be matched up by people who will not live long enough to finish. Number 4. The upside-down map that was right. Palermo, Sicily, the year 1154. An Arab geographer named Muhammad Al-Idrisi has just finished a project that took him roughly 15 years, working at the court of the Norman king Roger II. The result is called the Tabula Roheriana, though its full Arabic title translates beautifully to the excursion of one eager to penetrate the distant horizons. Try putting that on a business card. It's an atlas of 70 regional maps stitched into a coherent picture of the known world, and it was the most accurate world map anyone had made up to that point. Al-Idrisi even calculated the circumference of the Earth at 37,000 kilometers, which is within 10% of the real number. A man in the 12th century eyeballed the size of the planet and got it nearly right. So why does it look so strange to modern eyes? Because Al-Idrisi drew it with south at the top and north at the bottom, oriented around Mecca at the center. To us, it looks flipped, upside down. Wrong. It is not wrong. It's just that north on top is a convention we all agreed on later and then started treating like a law of physics. Al-Idrisi made a more accurate map than anyone in Europe, and his only crime was holding it the other way. There was also a deluxe edition, a 300-pound silver disc engraved with the entire composite world map. Pure showpiece. And in 1160, during a rebellion led by a man named Matthew Bonellis, both the silver disc and the original atlas were destroyed. 15 years of work and a quarter-ton of engraved silver, gone in a riot. The most advanced map of its age, deleted by local politics. Number 5. Charts from nowhere. Here's the one that genuinely keeps historians up at night. Around the year 1280, a new kind of map appears in the Mediterranean, the Portolan chart. Nautical charts, for sailors, showing coastlines with stunning precision. The oldest surviving one, the Carte Paysanne, sits in the National Library in Paris. And the problem is the word appears. Portolan charts show up suddenly, fully formed, already excellent. There are no rough drafts, no clumsy early versions, no centuries of getting better at it. One day there are no advanced sea charts, and the next day there are perfect ones, with no developmental trail leading up to them anywhere on the planet. It gets weirder. Normally technology improves over time, the later version is better than the older one. With Portolan charts, the later ones aren't better. The earliest examples are already as good as it gets, which has led some researchers to suspect they were all copied from some single, unknown, advanced source that nobody has ever found. And then the real headache. The Mediterranean coastlines on these charts are so accurate that researchers argue they imply the use of a Mercator-style projection, a mathematical method for flattening a curved Earth onto flat paper. The thing is, Gerardus Mercator didn't publish that projection until 1569. The Portolan charts predate him by about 3 centuries. No known medieval instrument, no known medieval technique should have been able to produce maps this precise. The origin is, to this day, officially unsolved. Somebody nailed it, told no one how, and then vanished into the fog of history with the receipts. Number 6. Columbus's very confident wrong map. Around 1491, in Florence, a German cartographer named Henricus Martellus produced what is now considered the best surviving map of the world exactly as Columbus understood it, which is a polite way of saying it's the best map of a world that was about to be proven wrong. We know Columbus leaned on something very much like it, because his own son Ferdinand wrote that his father expected to find Japan precisely where Martellus had drawn it. And that confidence is the whole tragicomedy of Columbus in a nutshell. He had a beautiful, detailed, authoritative map, he trusted it completely, and it pointed him at a continent he would spend the rest of his life misunderstanding. He didn't find Japan, he found the Caribbean, decided it was basically Asia, and doubled down. The map itself eventually showed up at Yale in 1962 as an anonymous gift. Someone just mailed history's most important wrong map to a university and declined to sign for it. It lives now in the Beinecke Rare Book and Manuscript Library, and for centuries it kept secrets, because its ink and labels had faded into the parchment until they were basically invisible. Then, in 2015, researchers got clever. They divided the map into 55 overlapping tiles and photographed each one at 22 different wavelengths of light, a technique called multispectral imaging, which can resurrect text the human eye can no longer see. And the faded captions came back to life, revealing hidden writing nobody had read in 500 years. The map Columbus trusted finally started talking. It just took half a millennium and a camera that sees in colors we can't. Number 7. The Antarctica hoax that fooled everyone. October 9th, 1929. The Topkapi Palace in Istanbul is being converted into a museum, and a German theologian named Gustav Adolf Deissmann is poking through the collection when he finds a folded-up old map. It turns out to be the work of an Ottoman admiral, Minas, and former Barbary pirate named Hachi Ahmed Muhyiddin Piri, drawn back in 1513. Only the western third of it survives. Piri Reis was refreshingly honest about his methods. He flat out told us he compiled his map from 20 different source charts, 8 older Ptolemaic maps, 4 Portuguese maps of Asia, an Arabic map of India, and a map by Christopher Columbus himself of the West Indies. And because he trusted Columbus, his map inherited Columbus's mistake. The Caribbean is drawn to reflect Columbus's belief that Cuba was part of mainland Asia. Garbage in, garbage out. 16th century edition. So far, so normal. Here's where it goes off the rails. In 1966, an academic named Charles Hapgood promoted the idea that the bottom of the Piri Reis map secretly shows the coastline of Antarctica, natist, ice-free, thousands of years before Antarctica was even discovered. The implication being some lost supercivilization mapped the South Pole before it froze. It became a wildly popular mystery. It is also nonsense. Geologist Paul Heinrich pointed out the small problem that Antarctica has not been free of ice for over 10 million years, which rather predates the Ottoman Navy. And cartographer Gregory McIntosh delivered the final brutal blow. The Piri Reis map isn't even the most accurate map of its own era. It's a perfectly interesting historical document that got drafted into a conspiracy it never auditioned for. A pirate's honest patchwork, accused of being psychic. Number 8. The $300,000 fake, featuring 1923 Norwegian chemicals. This is the finale, and it's the one that should make every credentialed expert in the room sweat a little. October 11th, 1965 minus, the day before Columbus Day, timing chosen for maximum drama minus, Yale unveils the Vinland map, alongside a whole scholarly book called The Vinland Map and the Tartar Relation. The map appeared to show the Norse had reached the New World long before Columbus. It was a sensation. The money trail is its own little comedy. A dealer named Laurence Witten II bought it from another dealer, Enzo Ferrajoli de Rie, for $3,500. Then, after experts authenticated it, the philanthropist Paul Mellon donated it to Yale at a valuation of around $300,000. So the price went up by a factor of nearly 90, purely on the strength of "the experts say it's real." The experts were wrong. In 2018, Yale's own conservators, Marie-France Lamaille and Paula Ziatz, working with heritage scientists, examined the yellowish ink lines and found anatase. Anatase is a manufactured form of titanium dioxide, and it was first commercially produced in Norway in 1923. There is no universe in which a genuine medieval map contains a pigment that was invented in a 20th century factory. The thing was busted by its own paint. And the forger had tried so hard. To sell the medieval origin, they'd taken a real piece of old parchment and overwritten a Latin inscription on the back with modern ink, specifically to trick people into thinking a medieval bookbinder had linked the map to a genuine medieval manuscript called the Speculum Historiale. Clever. Almost worked. But when scientists compared the parchment against 50 authentic 15th century fragments, the elemental composition came back dramatically different. The map was a forgery wearing a costume made of two real things glued together. So that's the countdown. A clay tablet that maps the parking spot of Noah's Ark. A scribe who invented geology and then had nowhere to publish it. A marble puzzle 500 years from finished. A perfect map held upside down, sea charts from nowhere, a continent imagined ice-free, and the most expensive piece of paper ever debunked by a chemistry set. The lesson, if there is one, is that humans have been confidently drawing the world for 3,000 years, Miskinanis, and the difference between genius and fraud often comes down to one tiny detail nobody noticed until much, much too late. Sometimes it's a bird that can't make the trip. Sometimes it's a Norwegian factory. The map always tells on itself eventually. You just have to wait a few centuries and bring the right camera.